I'm Jane Clarke, Managing Director from CIMM. We have Carol Frost here from Arbitron. I'm going to do a little introduction and explain some of the background on the project, and then Carol will go through some of the findings. Just for any of you who don't know, we've been hearing a lot about measurement crisis, and I'm actually here to tell you that innovation is alive and well and hard at work at CIMM. So CIMM is basically a brain trust for innovation, and it's a coalition of buyers and sellers, so media companies, video-based media companies, media buying agencies, large advertisers who've come together in what they call in other countries a tripartite organization to innovate and develop new methods for the industry, particularly in two areas is where we started. So could we improve the measurement of television through the use of return path data, which I'm not going to talk about today, but there's plenty of stuff on our website if you'd like to learn more about that. The second issue is to work to solve the cross-platform measurement challenge. You could call it a crisis, but we're calling it a challenge. So these are our CIMM members. It's basically a brain trust of some of the smartest people in the industry. I'm honored to work with them, and their contributions to all of what we do cannot be understated. They are CIMM, basically. So what we're trying to do is to work with, independently with any research vendors to just push solutions to these problems. And so the first thing that we did a couple of years ago when CIMM was first formed was we sat down and tried to lay out the territory for cross-platform measurement. And we broke it into these three buckets, as we call it. So planning is what I think Brad was talking about today, is getting a consumer-centric view of how a particular target audience, any target audience, uses all forms of media throughout the day, whatever time of day, day of the week, where they are, who they're with, what they're doing, and how they feel. And this is a proof of concept pilot test that we launched a couple of years ago that has now taken off in the industry called Touchpoints, USA Touchpoints from the Media Behavior Institute. And CIMM was very gratified by how well that's been received in the industry. It was our first big project, and it really, if you haven't seen it or don't know anything about it, there's some amazing examples throughout the whole conference here of how that data are now being used. I'm going to actually skip to the last bucket, since I'm going to spend most of our time talking about the middle bucket. But the last bucket, again, this is a little bit more what the challenge that Brad was raising earlier today, this whole issue of cross-platform ad effectiveness, very important issue in the industry. What CIMM did initially to start was we hired a very smart consultant, Michelle Medansky, and she went around and interviewed a lot of the end users and a lot of the companies that do what's known as cross-platform ad effectiveness research. And there's a white paper up on our website that you can read that highlights some of her findings. And one of the particular issues there is the problem when you go cross-platform and you try to then put people into these buckets of exposure to different combinations of media. It's quite a challenge to try to do it with the current methodologies. She calls it murky experimentation. And so one of the things that CIMM's done in that area is we put out an RFP to try to get passive measurement for exposure in a cross-platform way that can then be linked to brand impact and ROI metrics. And so we've been evaluating a lot of responses to that proposal, and hopefully we'll have a project or two to announce soon. But let me go focus on the middle bucket, because that's what we're here to talk about today. We're tackling this bucket from two angles. One is actually from an asset-centric approach. And we have an initiative called TAXI, which I hope you'll start hearing a lot more about in the industry. It's called Trackable Asset Cross-Platform Identification. And basically, think of it as a UPC code for media. It's a way to get standardized metadata about ads and about content to work through, to be attached to an asset so that you can follow and track it more easily as it goes across platforms. That's a simple explanation. There's a lot more up on our website, and we're about to launch this summer a pilot test with 6 media companies and about 4 agency advertiser combinations to actually test that in the wild, as they say. So let's move to then the other approach that we're taking here, which is the actual development of single source, multi-screen measurement techniques. And we did 2 projects, which we launched about 1.5 years ago, one with comScore that we spoke about this morning, and this one with Arbitron that you're going to hear from, from Carol in a minute here. And basically, we've just launched the white paper and the final presentations for both of these studies. They're up on our website, available for anyone to download. And we're very excited. The goal of these projects really was to get, for a single person, the measurement of their usage of media and advertising across television, online, and mobile, including in some cases tablets, in some cases just smartphones. And I'm here to say that we're making great strides forward. You'll hear from Carol that this is possible, and then I'll come back at the end and talk about kind of what we're going to be doing to scale this.
Thank you, Jane. So I wanted to spend some time today talking to you about what it was like for us to build the panel and to maintain the panel, as well as to give you some of the insights we found on the entire project. Some of the CIMM objectives, of course, the main one is to determine the feasibility of building this 3-screen cross-platform data. And single source was very, very important. To me, that gives you 3 challenges. One is, can you communicate with the panelists enough to do the activities that you need them to do? Can you convince them to carry a PPM and then to download the pieces, the devices, on their devices, the software that they need so we can measure that? The second one is, can you handle all the technical challenges that come with measuring 3 screens with a single person? We found, I just did a survey the other day, we found that in our 500 3-screen panel for the Android users, we had 185 different versions of cell phones, just for the Android. 85% of them were with 49 different versions. So when you are metering something and developing software, it is important that you stay ahead of the curve from the technology end. We also, had the challenge of being able to find the panelist. Because this was 3-screen, and because at the time, mobile was only in the 30%, mobile smartphones were only in the 30% range, that presented us with new challenges. I'm happy to say we were able to find the panelists, we were able to get them to do the tasks that we asked, and we were able to keep up with the technology. But it is always going to be moving forward. You're going to have to, with a panel like this, you have to be one step ahead. We were asked to measure 3-screen usage for some selected programs and advertising campaigns. Today I'm going to talk to you about the programs we measured. We did do a couple of advertising campaigns, but we had a very small panel. So we did not really have results that were certainly anything that we could speak to up here. And then, of course, gaining an understanding of how we would scale in the future. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the learnings we've had throughout this project, and some of the things we would do a little bit differently were we to do it again. And we definitely have some insights on our data. There were some, I have to remember to click the clicker. There were some important considerations that the CIMM committee wanted us to do. First and foremost, I think it's important to understand that this sample is targeted only to cross-platform users. So if you did not have the 3 screens, you were not part of this panel. So it is not representative. And we also were asked to do a direct link between our TV and our PC users. What that meant to us is that the PPM, which is a personal device, we know that we can connect that person, but when you have a laptop or a PC that's in your home that's used by multiple people, we needed to understand who was using the PC at that time. So what we did, and I'll show you an example of it in a minute, is we did put a login screen onto the people that were using the PC. And so every time they use the PC, we asked them to log in and identify that they were who they were. Workplace media usage was important to the CIMM and is important as we know that there's probably more and more workplace media usage going on. We have developed what I would call as a surrogate measure. So when you see me put the slide up with some of the estimates, you'll see quotes around it because it is not pure workplace. But we believe that we can use the fact that we understood who was using a work PC and the fact that we have out-of-home data, and we combine them together. Use of a data dictionary was also important. We did not have a data dictionary, and we were able to lease a data dictionary for the use of this project. And we did include measurements of users, usage, in and out of home, which is something that we're able to provide because of our PPM service, and simultaneous usage. We also built an interface, which I will be using today. And as a matter of fact, all of the graphics that you'll see in this are just screenshots from the actual user interface. So our project was a very small project because we were really focused on really determining whether or not we could build that single source panel. So we had a 500 portable person single source panel, and we used reactivated PPM panelists. So these were people that had been carrying our PPM for a few years, were no longer carrying, they had been turned over, they were no longer carrying it, and we reached out to them and reactivated them to carry the PPM and also to download the meters onto their smartphones and their PCs. We only stayed with 18 and above, and our measurement period was November to January. So the PPM, for those of you that are not familiar with it, the PPM is a portable device that looks like a cell phone, and it tracks broadcast and cable TV. We also, when we did the campaign measurement, we encoded some television commercials, and we also encoded some commercials that ran, video commercials that ran online. So the PPM did all that. Then we had a software meter that was downloaded onto the PCs that would measure the internet URL usage. And we had also a mobile device, a mobile meter that was measuring Android and BlackBerry. Our technology was not ready for the iPhone yet, so we kept this study to Android and BlackBerry. So we basically had a 4-step process for how we recruited and brought panelists in. We first reached out and surveyed the former PPM panelists. We wanted to find whether or not they would be interested and also if they were eligible. We did not want to give them a PPM if they did not have a smartphone. So we sent out a survey. We sent it first on email, but we also did some of the surveys to people where we did not have email addresses. We actually sent a letter with the same kind of survey. And one thing we found is that definitely people that were previously had registered an email address with Arbitron were more likely to become CIMM members. They're just more electronically focused. So slow mail is out for us in the future. Once we had gotten a pool of people that had expressed an interest and had said that they had the appropriate devices, then we started recruiting them. What we wanted them to do was carry the PPM first. We wanted to get that out because they needed to establish that behavior. So we did a telephone recruitment of those people that had expressed an interest, and we asked them to carry the PPM and explain to them that they were going to be installing the internet. We did accept, typically when we measure PPM households in our radio currency service, we make sure that everyone in the household 6 and plus is involved in the service. In this case, we did allow partial households because you needed to have a smartphone, and also we did not want to measure children in this study. So of the people that were eligible, we had about 42% that agreed to participate. And the next part was just sending them the PPM once we had recruited them. And these PPMs are self-installed, so the people self-installed them. So once they were installed with the internet measurement, then we would send them an email and invite them to download the meters. We did not measure tablets in this service. We also did not measure Macs. So we were with Windows PC, Android, and BlackBerry. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit about how we went about inviting them into the, into the installation process. The panelists went to the My Meter and Me site, so we would send them an email or give them a voicemail that said it is time to go ahead and install your other devices. Go to the My Meter and Me website. The My Meter and Me website is something that our PPM panelists are familiar with, and it is a site that allows them to mostly socialize what they do with the PPM, so they can track their points because they get points for carrying the PPM the appropriate number of hours. They can get updates and get pieces of news articles. And in this case, it was our vehicle for them to go in and start the installation process of the PC meter and the mobile meter. The first thing they do is we ask them to take a quick survey. So the purpose of the survey was twofold. One is to confirm eligibility. You know, you'd be surprised the number of people that think they have an Android phone and they don't. So they needed to, go in and give us information. But we also got a little bit more of a profile from them. So we would find out how many PCs they had in the house. Where did the PCs reside? Were they their own PCs? Did they share them with other people? So they filled out a little bit more detail for us so that we could then understand what kind of installation package we needed to send them, and also to confirm that they were indeed qualified. Once they had taken that quick survey, then they went in and they were instructed to go ahead and install the meters. That was a simple click to a link, or they would say they're ready to install the phone, and then we would send them a message telling them where to go to install the smartphone. It was a very simple process for them. It didn't take very long, but we did find that getting them, it was pretty easy for them to do one task, but getting them to do the second task was a bigger challenge. So we've learned a lot about that, which I'll talk about in a little while. The panel was built in waves. We started with a wave, and then we would stop and look at the results. One of the things we learned is that we started with panelist communications that were general, and we found that that was needed to be fine-tuned. So if we found that people were not going to the second or the third step, we stopped in between a wave and we refined our communications to them. We found that by the end of the survey, we were to a point where we were really focusing on that you had to do the other two activities. You had to download the meter both to the phone and the PC. And we started giving them time frames. You know, if you do this, we will give you this incentive. If you do it by the next 48 hours, we will give you this incentive. And we found that that was a very effective way to communicate with them. Panelists received incentives for carrying the PPM. You know, in order for a PPM to be a panelist to be considered in tab, they have to carry it a certain number of hours of the day so that we're collecting all of their media behavior. So they were rewarded with carrying their PPM incentives throughout the entire time that they were on the panel. But we did give also a bonus to people that successfully installed the PC meter and also to the smartphone meter. They were also entered into a monthly sweepstakes, so we gave them a bump every month, or the hope of a bump every month for you know, staying on the panel. So this was an example of what a panelist might find if they were asked to participate in this and they had to log in directly to their PC. We only put this kind of slide on for panelists who were sharing a PC. I think in the future we would look for certainly a more passive way to measure that so that panelists aren't continuously asked to log in. Relative to privacy, we had a privacy statement that was included in the installation process that made it clear to the panelists that not only were we measuring their television viewing as well as radio listening, and we were also measuring their visits to the URLs on both the mobile phone and the PC. We had panelists click through and acknowledge the privacy statement, and we asked them to actively accept the software meters, that they were ready to accept it. Since we did not track children, that was not a challenge for us, and we did not collect their URL data. Privacy is always a concern, and it certainly is always a concern here at Arbitron of making sure that we are not violating the privacy agreements that we have with our panelists. And I know that we've had a lot of CIMM members that have asked us if privacy was an issue with these panelists. Did we have people that were uncomfortable because of privacy? And one of the things we did at the end of the survey is we did an in-depth interview with some of our panelists and asked them some questions. And to a person, not one of them was concerned about the privacy. But we are, you know, really thinking that that is because the Arbitron panelists, they had a prior relationship with Arbitron. And so I put this quote up here about a person that said, okay, I had concerns, but then I thought about it and I trust Arbitron, so you know, what the heck? You know, that goes to the fact that the way we manage our PPM panel is we tend to have a personal relationship with our panelists, and they get to know someone who will you know, give them a call if they've forgotten to wear their PPM for a few days, et cetera. So, you know, it does build a relationship. They have a name and a person that they talk to at Arbitron. So that was definitely a plus for us on privacy. I think it would be a bigger challenge if we were to go out and, you know, do a panel from people that we didn't have a previous relationship with. So I want to say that this panel was in no way, shape, and form meant to be representative. It was, you know, pulled from a bunch of previous panelists, and the people that participated and were part of the panel certainly had to be three-screen users. Nevertheless, we did not find all people were young. Nor did we find all people that were old, which was certainly one of the concerns that CIMM had expressed when we first started. Are you going to have all old people in this panel? We did not have all BlackBerry users. Although we didn't do any kinds of differential survey treatments, et cetera, we did have you know, a healthy group of Hispanic panelists in this panel. We did not Although we didn't have any special treatments for them, we did indeed have Spanish translations of our materials and our website for them. So one of the things that we were working towards was, definitely keeping our in-tab up so that we were reporting only on people that, we had the opportunity to get data from. So individually, our PPM in-tab came up at about 88%, and you can see the mobile meter was 78%, and the PC meter was 74%. And our in-tab rules really were for the PPM, you had to carry it. You had to carry it the number of hours that was required each day. For the mobile meter and the PC meter, we were looking for heartbeats to come back that would indicate that the meter was indeed connected to the internet. So as you can see, individually you have a pretty healthy in-tab rate, but our goal was we had to combine all of those. So you needed to be, in order to be in our tabulated sample, you needed to be all three pieces of information. So our in-tab rate was consistently across the 3 months of the study around 60%. So let me talk a little bit about the CIMM member participants. We actually conducted 25 different individual studies for CIMM. We called them projects. We met with the participating media companies and set up the various projects. Some of them had one project, some of them had three. It depended. So for example, you might have with, say, NBC, you had an NBC Sports project, and then you had an NBC Entertainment project. Some of the companies had particular programs or groupings of programs, and other companies just wanted us to group by day parts. Each one was different. We set up the project definitions ahead of the project at the very beginning. Since we were doing individual projects that each member was going to be, this was not syndicated at all, so their projects could be very, very different results from one another, we decided to do what we called CIMM projects. So we have two projects that we did for CIMM. Project one looked at social media. So it took all of the CIMM members' content, so their television content, and also looked at major social media. So we find, and it was very interesting because CIMM Project 2, which I'm going to talk about in a second, gave us very different results. So this was an aggregation of the people who were participating in the CIMM survey, and also who were, what they did when they also looked at Facebook. So the second project looked at CIMM members' content, but also looked at Hulu, Netflix, and some of the online video sites. So we are finding that there was definitely very different behaviors. I'm going to show you some of that in a minute between those two different populations. The second project also looked, when I say members' content, that was also, for example, ESPN.com, NBC.com, CBS.com, etc. So one of the things that was important to the CIMM committee was not to get a bunch of Excel spreadsheets because this data is there's quite a bit of it when you go in to mine it. So we decided to build a tool, and the tool had three components to it. This one is an example of what the tool looks like and what the members, and it's a web app that we handed off to the members so that they all had access to it, and it had three components to it. This component is the reach component, so you could look at how people were reached. I will say, though, that we did not sample weight this, so anything you're seeing, these are not real numbers up here that you're looking at, but anything that you would see were just counts because the panel was just too small to do any weighting. The second component of our application was a behavior analysis. And in that, the goal was to be able to compare two behaviors. So you could define a target and a control, and then that would go out and give you some information about the two behaviors, and then it would draw a nice little conclusion for you so that you could see comparing the two behaviors. So in this one, you could also, in both of them, you could also drill down and get more and more detailed information about each of those. The third component of it, and I don't have a slide for that, was saving your insights. So as we all know, with a web tool, you can run that. Think there are so many different filters and so many ways to look at the data. It is important that you have the ability to save that insight because you might want to go back to it later. So now on to some of the information and data that we collected. As I said before, we did not go out and do special graphics. All we did was do a cut and paste off of the applications that we built. And in this case, we found what everyone else has found, is that TV is captured most of the time spent with media, and that PC is the next in line for the time spent with media, and the time spent on mobile internet is definitely smaller. Keep in mind, though, that we were only measuring Androids and Blackberries, so it might be a different profile when we had an iPhone in there. We also found that the majority of users who viewed the content fell into the 35 to, the three-screen users fell into 35 to 49 range, and that there were more males that viewed three-screen content, more males than we found that in a group of TV only. So if we had people that only looked at TV, you actually had more males that used three-screen. So now we're looking at the number of people that we reached. We had no panelist in this group used PC or mobile internet without also using TV. So TV was remains a very strong component. And almost all of our panelists, 98% that were cross-platform, used at least two of the screens. And almost a third used all three screens. Keep in mind, though, that these are people that were in tab for all three screens. So that means that they had to have the internet available on all three screens. So when I look at project one with the social media usage, that was a big component. So 93% of the users who were viewed the CIMM members' TV content also visited Facebook. So to be in this, you had to be viewing the CIMM members' TV content. They also, 87%, used other popular social sites, such as Twitter, LinkedIn, GetGlue, MySpace. As we've heard over and over again in this conference, the more screens you use, the more time you spent with media. And this was no exception with the people that were in our CIMM1 project. They spent 123% more time with media than TV-only users did. Now, at work usage, what we're using to define at work is one of the things that we asked panelists to do when they were filling out that survey I talked about is they could register their work computers and also they could tell us if they used a computer for both work and at home. So those were dual use. And so when we are looking at this at work usage, we are saying that these are people that had registered computers that said they were work computers, and that they were also, our PPM told us that they were out of the home. So these were people that were out of home using work computers. And we found that 35% of these users access the CIMM members' content while at work. And PC internet is certainly the predominant method, but 14% also used an app, and we had 50% used mobile internet content while at work. A lot of the people, 81%, went to YouTube, and Hulu seems to be a high category here for people watching Hulu, and they spent an average of 90 minutes on the site. So we took that and compared that to, well, what did these people do while they were at home? And so what we found is that although we found a lot of at-work content consumed at work, we found also quite a bit. It still is much smaller than work, using the at-work computers at home. So Hulu was the one site where we found that the users were spending more time than at work than they did at home. So with an average of 90 minutes when they were at work and 55 minutes at home. So a word about some of our other projects. You can see that the projects are radically different depending on who the network was and depending on how advanced they are in some of their PC and mobile strategies. Some networks had, the vast majority of people only accessed TV. And then when you get to some of these networks, it was a larger swing for PC and TV usage or TV and mobile usage. And then, of course, with the CIMM that when you bring in these websites like Facebook and Foursquare and YouTube, etc., it changes the picture quite a bit. So popular internet sites are definitely driving a lot of PC and mobile reach. And TV reach, TV-only reach might be reduced, but never total TV. So a popular theme here today is that social media seems to drive the usage. So when we put the CIMM project up against the CIMM project, we are finding that the total time spent with TV always remains the same, but the percentage of time declines from 90% for CIMM Project 2 to 52% for CIMM Project 1. And CIMM Project 1 is the one where we were also measuring some of the other video sites. We also find that the drivers of mobile and three-screen users also are different from social users, social search and email, than they are from people that are using the video sites. So as you can see, mobile users jump from 43% in the social sites to 69%. And three-screen users increases from 35 to 60%. So a word about simultaneous. Just as we saw the social media driving all of the amount of time spent on cross-platform, we also see it with simultaneous, with the social media coming in with 11% of the users simultaneously on the social media sites while they're also on the watching television, with only a small percentage of mobile. When we move on to the project 2, which is only looking at the mobile, the video usage, the Hulu sites and the YouTubes and the CIMM member sites themselves, we see that the simultaneous usage is much smaller, with a 1% usage with a PC, and virtually no percentage with the mobile. So what did we learn out of all of this? Well, when we learned about building the panel is that explicit communications are the best, and that we found that panelists will respond to installing things on a deadline. And I think one of the biggest lessons we learned, and we kind of laughed at it at one of our CIMM meetings, because if you really want people to do 3 screens, don't pay them for 2. And that was one of the things we found, is that we were rewarding somebody to get the 2nd screen, which means that we had to do a lot more prompting to get them to do the 3rd screen. So, that is something to keep in mind for anyone that might be out there wanting to build a panel. Make sure you, you withhold your rewards until they do the act that you really want them to do. We found that technically smartphones and PCs will have constant operating system upgrades. We had one when we started our downloads in August. We had 2 operating system upgrades that were sent through, and it caused us to have a little bit of a blip. So we have learned that we need to be a step ahead of all of the companies who are upgrading constantly, because it's always going to be going on. It is rapidly evolving. As I said, we had quite a few different versions of meters, of phones, and that will only grow and change because people are not buying one single device universally. So, in conclusion, we have we believe that 3-screen audience measurement is in its infancy. We've certainly taken some baby steps here. We still have a lot to learn. And that we think that editing and processing rules are evolving and would really benefit from some industry consensus. That would be a very good thing to do. There's a lot of different ways to put this data together, and data is really going to be more useful if we start to build some standards around how to put this data together. The consumers are adapting new technologies faster than we can certainly measure them, and we know that the definition of cross-platform will consistently evolve. For example, we look at 3-screen and say people have to have 3 screens, but how many people have gotten an iPad and rarely go on their PC anymore because they've gotten an iPad? So those are the kinds of industry conversations that we believe need to be occurring as we try to build some of our processing rules and build standards for how we would do things in the future. The single source is, we believe that a single source cross-platform panel, though, is really critical to future scalable solutions. And we believe that it's probably infeasible to build a panel out to the kinds of sizes that you would need to properly measure the internet interface. But if you have something that is of a reasonable size, it would make a great calibration tool and help put, put everything in perspective for the people that are trying to do census-based measurement. And we think that the value, obviously, of cross-platform measurement is going to be dependent on the adoption in the planning and buying ecosystems in the future. So with that, I'm going to bring Jane back up.
Well, thank you, Carol. You can see, how this is still early days in the development of scalable cross-platform measurement. This is really, I think, was it Jack or someone was saying yesterday, test and learn. We're really in the era of test and learn. But you can even see from this small scale study as to the kind of insights that you can get from these kinds of data and the value that there is in solving for this problem, or this challenge, I should say. And so, we can also see how these findings support others that we've seen, around the conference and around the industry in the last year or two, from some of the custom studies from ESPN, from Turner, from NBC with the Olympics. You're finding a lot of similar trends in the results, and it just makes it even more imperative to turn these more custom approaches into scalable industry standards that we can all use in the industry and work together. So the next step for CIMM really is to try to scale all of this, and so about 6 months ago or so, we put out an RFP and sent it out to all the likely suspects. If we missed anyone, just send me an email, and then we're glad to continue circulating it. So we've been really trying to get the best ideas in the industry to think about the best ways to scale this. And this is what you can see on the screen here is typically what I draw when I'm at lunch with one of these people on the napkin. Trying to explain what may end up being, sort of the most likely solution at this point, which is some form of what Carol was talking about, high quality, small calibration panel that's single source, that helps us to get demographics and helps us to get the proper intermedia relationships, and then combine, similar to the the hybrid unified digital measurement that comScore pioneered, Nielsen's using, where you're taking census-type data and combining it with panel data. That approach can be taken across media to scale out each of these different platforms. So there are several different approaches that people have come back to us with, but this is, it kind of mostly comes down to some form of calibration panels and hybrid measurement with calibration panels and some form of census measurement, whether it's set-top box data for television, server kinds of data, beacons and tags in the digital space. So, that's what we're working on next. We welcome any other ideas from other vendors with solutions. We welcome participation from other members to join CIMM and to help to fight the good fight here. And I think that's actually all I have to say. We do have time, I think, for a few questions, if there are any. It's kind of hard for us to see from up here, so I guess they turn the lights up if there's any questions. This is that after lunch lull, but I think I see a question.
There's
Jeff?
a question.
Do you have a?
Thank you. Can you talk about the types of incentives for the different levels that you have? Because you pointed out, don't ask for 3 and pay for 2. Or so what types of incentives did you find actually work with that 60% response rate?
We found, well, money talks. So it's always money. What we did is we varied the incentive that we paid to the people that, thinking that a smartphone was more difficult to install, we gave them more money for the installation of a smartphone and less money for the installation of the PC meter. And then we, the PPM panelists are used to getting, it's a small stipend that they get with a monthly check. So, but it was always money. And next time we would take the same amount of money, I think, and just combine it to do both of the PC and the meter downloads. You know, we feel like those are passive measurements, so once that's downloaded, one of the things our panelist interviews told us that, you know, once the PC meter and the smart meter were downloaded, they completely forgot about it, that it existed.
I see another one, yeah.
Can you say anything about, in terms of simultaneous media usage, whether you saw for the second screen, whether there was a preponderance towards social media or towards search? What was could you tell what type of content was being
Social media or search? So was it Facebook or Google that you saw in the, we kind of grouped it in that first project.
Yeah, we did group it. I could, you know, if you contact me afterwards, we can look at that. I mean, we can get to that detail, but I don't have it with me.
And also, this is obviously one of the main reasons to scale it, is once you start seeing this, you want to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And, you know, what is, comScore has 1 million panelists to measure digital. Nielsen has a huge digital panel. I mean, you can see the size. Size really matters when you start talking about digital, mobile, and television all combined. It just makes everything, you know, even more fragmented, and you need much, much bigger samples to really get to all the questions that we want to answer.
Hello?
I can't.
Hello? Oh, hi. I know it was only a 3-month test, but did you get any sense by the end of the 3rd month what kind of churn levels you were getting? I know with a 60% in tab, I would suspect you'd have some pretty high challenges on churn as well.
We did, and I think that one of the things we learned is that 3-month panels are tough, you know, because it takes them a while to settle down. And we found by the 3rd month that people were settling in, and our turnover was a lot less than it had been. So, you know, it definitely spiked where people were turning over, but by the 3rd month it had settled down. So if we were to run this, you know, for in perpetuity, I think that getting people acclimated to what you're doing, once they're acclimated, it's not difficult to keep them in the panel.
It really is like being blinded by the light up here. Are there any more questions, since I can't really see them?
There's one over there.
One more over there?
So, as we're talking about scaling this up for the future, how do you feel about abandoning the roots of probability sample? Are you going to still try and make it representative, or are
well,
you just
I think
going
what
to
we would do is the calibration panel would definitely be representative. That's how we would do that.
Yeah, I think if you, I mean, as I was just saying at the end there, the calibration panel being, if it was representative then, and the importance of it being, I mean, the question here too is when you start talking about representative, and you get, when you're on multi-screens, it's representative of what, you know,
Yep.
of the entire US population, or of the users of 2 screens or 3 screens. There are a bunch of different types of universes that you end up with when you start getting into, you know, analyzing 3-screen measurement or 4-screen measurement. So, you know, it's obviously important to have a very high quality calibration panel and to make sure it's representative of a universe that you can then get universe estimates of. But then as you're doing your hybrid measurement, you know, depending how you're doing that to get the right volumetric measures, if you're getting out to a sizable enough universe, then you know, you're representing the universe. So you don't have to worry about sampling at that point. So it's complex, but it's a good question. Okay.
Well, thank you very
Thanks.
much.